What did, during the Depression, of course, I imagine many people were listening to President Roosevelt.
Oh gosh, yeah, President Bush. What, you know, see, all the people in the South, they were under the influence you know, everybody was a Democrat in the South. I mean, you know, and of course when we lost the Civil War, you know, they called them black Republicans up there, you know, because of everything that went on. But that's about all I remember about that.
Mm-hmm. Let's see, now the black Republicans were...
Well, Lincoln's party, of course,
Okay.
old Seward, and you know, he was
Okay.
the Secretary of State during the Civil War, and a fellow named Lincoln, you know, had a cabinet, and they were all called black Republicans. You know, the Southern people called them that, and of course when Roosevelt come in, Democrats, everybody was, oh gosh. We were under such a depression that people were having to live. There was 30 million people, they said, was unemployed. And it was, I think, about 40% of the workforce. And, you know, they're all lined up in suit lines and everything else. And so Roosevelt, he was almost sacred, you know, to the Southern people, boy, that everybody gathered around the radio, you know, to listen to those fireside chats. Oh, that was a big, big thing. And the Republicans, they were few and far between in Georgia. It's not like it is today. You know, Republicans are, I know Tom would turn over his grave if he knew it, but so Tom was a staunch Democrat. Oh, he loved the Democratic Party. There wasn't no any alternative except the Democratic.
Why do you, in your opinion, knowing him, why do you think he was such a staunch Democrat?
You know, I really don't know. I don't know. You know, you see some, now Senator Richard B. Russell was as conservative and he was a Democrat. You know, the Southern Democrat was altogether different from the Northern Democrat. And Tom, he was a Southern Democrat, but he had conservative views. He was very conservative, like, you know, balanced budget, you know, and he believed in, you know, not spending money like they're doing in Washington today. I mean, you know, back then, you balance the budget every year. And Democrat, and Senator Russell, he voted with the Republicans, you know, after the Depression was over, you know. But Southern Democrats, they had the same philosophy as the current Republicans.
Do you remember when Tom Murphy first ran for office?
Yeah, let's see, I don't remember. Well, Tom, I was living in Atlanta. I served 4 years in the Navy, and Tom did too, I believe, in World War II. And I was over in Atlanta, and Tom came back to Bremen and practiced law with his brother James. And I stayed over in Atlanta. So there's a period of time that, you know, I lost, and I wasn't familiar with everything that's going on in Bremen.
One thing I wanted to ask you about was, we were talking earlier about the two of you going into the Navy, but you said you went in at different times.
Yes, ma'am. We went in different times. When Tom got out of North Georgia College, you know, his daddy sent him up there, you know, because he wanted to get him straightened out.
Oh, well, tell us about that.
Well, I mean, straightened out. He never got into any trouble or anything like that, but I never will forget an old fellow named Spurgeon Camp who used to fix lawnmowers, and he was telling me about one day he was driving his T-model Ford down the street, and Tom was out in the yard, and he threw a bunch of rocks at him. You know, as he went by, and Mr. Murphy marched old Tom down there and told him to apologize, you know, for throwing the rock there, because he could have hurt him. Now, that's the kind of thing that I'm talking about when I say straightened out. No, he wasn't mean or anything like that. He was just a kid, that's all, about all you can say.
How old do you think he was when he chunked the rocks?
When he did what?
When he threw the rocks, about how old do you think he
He
was?
must not have been over 7 or 8 years old. But Spurgeon Camp, he was the chief of police here, you know, and he drove by in his car and Tom was throwing rocks at him. As he went by. I thought that's kind of funny, but when Mr. Camp, his name was Camp, Spurgeon Camp, he was a policeman here at one time in Bremen. He worked for the Alcohol Tobacco Tax up in North Georgia, chasing bootleggers. That was Spurgeon Camp, but he was later Bremen police after he retired. But that's the gentleman that I'm referring to.
All right. So Tom went to North Georgia. Do you know anything about his time up there?
No, I tell you why. Because when I graduated in 1940 and Tom graduated in 41, well, I had a brother-in-law at war was just beginning to, things was getting worse over in Europe. You know, Hitler was in charge and we were getting closer to war. And they started preparing, you know, for war back in 39, back in 40. It wasn't 39, I guess. So I went to Savannah and worked down there until I went into the Navy. Well, Tom was at North Georgia College during that term. And as far as I know, he must have got out in about 42 or 3. And then he promptly went into the Navy. And he was over in the Solomon Islands. And he had it rough over there. I know he did. Because they were, you know, over there building airstrips, you know, and those island skipping, you know, they call it, so they could use those B-24s, you know, that has enough flying capacity to them, you know, they could hit Tokyo. So Tom was over there in some of those islands, but Tom never talked about that. We corresponded now during the war, and he'd tell me things, you know, what was going on over there. But he had it rough. I never will forget whenever he came back from overseas, right after they, you know, in August of 45, you know, that's when they dropped the atomic bomb, and the war come to a halt pretty quick. And Tom came back, and we were up at Charleston, South Carolina, in the Navy, in the receiving station, waiting for discharge. And of course, they had a point system back then. You know, if you served overseas, you know, for a year you served, you got 10 points. You know, and you had to. And then they started out where you had to have 50 points to get out. You know, and then they reduced it to 40 and so on. Well, Tom had about 3 years over there in Solomon Islands over that. So he built up some points. So Tom, he got out a little earlier than I did. I was in the Navy Air Corps, and we flew blimps, you know, and I was stationed in the United States, but Tom was overseas, and as I say, he was engaged in building those airstrips so the United States could hit Japan, you know, with their bombs. But so that period of time, when I was in the Navy, I was on a blimp flying from Jacksonville, Florida, to Lakehurst, New Jersey, and I never did go overseas, but we happened to meet over at Charleston, and I saw him in the chow line over there one day. And I hadn't seen him in 2 or 3 years. I'd been longer than that, and that's when we got together over there. And I showed you that picture. You know, we went out there. No, I gave it to Keith, I believe. Tom and I, we were over at Conway Beach, waiting until we was being discharged.
Okay, so that picture was taken in Charleston at Conway Beach.
I think it's Conway Beach. I believe that's the name of it. I forgot. It's a beach over there at South Carolina, over at Charleston. Okay. That was the 6th Naval District, and Charleston was. They had a receiving station there, and that's where they sent you to be discharged whenever you built up enough points. See, so Tom, because of all those points he built up overseas, he got out about 2 months before I did.
Okay.
Yeah.
So he got out like soon after that picture was taken.
Right, that's right. He got out, I think, he probably I got out in March, and he must have got out in about November or December of 45, right after, it wasn't long after, till, after they bombed, they dropped the atomic bomb.
At what point did he go to law school?
What time?
At what point did he go to law
Oh,
school?
well, just as soon as he got out of service. Oh, see, Tom, I don't reckon he had any steady girlfriends at all, and I didn't either because, it just wasn't time enough to establish any friendships or connection. and so while I was over there waiting discharge, Tom met his wife, Agnes Bennett. Her name was Bennett. I think Tom would go up from his house after he was discharged, and she was on the basketball team. Agnes was, and I think that's the way Tom met her. He'd go up there and watch those basketball games, the high school basketball games up here.
And this was here in Bremen?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think that's when he first met Agnes. Well, they married shortly thereafter. And then whenever he was admitted to the University of Georgia to go to law school, they went together. And Tom had an old trailer. And I'll never will forget, he lived over there on Baxter Street at the University of Georgia. And they had this lady that had an old boarding house there. And, the people were just, veterans covered up the university right after the war. 50% or more, were veterans of World War II. And they married, and they had a trailer, and that old lady, she stuck all the trailers out there and had that boarding house, and Agnes and Tom lived in that trailer out there.
So the lady had like a place where you could come eat, but she had trailers around?
Yeah, in the backyard. I won't say a backyard, it was Baxter Street, it wasn't developed on that. See, it's right off Millage Avenue. If you know where Millage is, it was on Baxter Street. I never will forget that. And but Tom and Agnes lived there, and their first son, as well, their first child, was born over in Athens. And I went over there to Huntsville with Tom whenever Agnes was birthing Mike. That was their oldest son, Mike Murphy. And of course, and then then we graduated, I think it was, Tom and I graduated both in March. They used to have graduations, different quarter. We was on a quarter basis now. I think they're on a semester basis now. But Tom and I got out about the same. We got out in March. I finished accounting over there, and Tom finished law school. And we got out in March, and then they held a ceremony in June out there in Sanford Stadium. So Tom and I went back in June and to go through the ceremony, whatever it was. I don't know what it was.
And so you were studying accounting. You weren't in law school?
Not at that time, no. Then Tom, as I say, come back to Bremen and started practicing in law. So I got a job as an accountant over in Atlanta when I got out in 1949. See, we both graduated in 1949.